argue he put them in position to get the bye when he drove down the field against Miami to take the lead. And if the defense could just hold up, they would have a bye, and it would have just been a scare. Another bad Patriots game that Coach Mangini would say, but they found a way to win, so it did no style points. And so the defense, though, that had been carrying this team all year, finally had a slip up, and it cost them the bye. But the reason the defense has had to carry them all year is because of substandard offensive play, most notably substandard passing game, which falls primarily on the quarterback. And the one thing Tom Brady, even at age 42, does exceptionally well is take care of the football. The second half of the year, he only threw 4 interceptions. But what were those 4 interceptions? Because if he throws just 3 of them, if you take just one of them back, they probably have a bye. Here's the first interception against Baltimore. They're in the fourth quarter. After being down 17-0, they've clawed back in the game. They're down 10 at the point. They have the ball. Brady throws a pick. The Baltimore scores a touchdown. Game over. Against Houston, they're up 3-0 early. Brady throws a pick. Houston goes on and scores. It's never a game the rest of the way. Against Kansas City, they're down 10-7 after starting off great in that football game. Mahomes had thrown a pick. They'd executed a trick play. Brady throws a pick, leads to a touchdown. They never get it closer than 1 touchdown the rest of the way. And against Miami, gets picked off for a pick 6 touchdown, leads Miami up 10-0, where you start to feel, oh, the upset could really happen, and that had an additional butterfly effect of that is why Belichick would not let them try to attempt a 2-minute drive at the end of the half. That is why Belichick, instead of saying 2 timeouts a minute 45, let's go take the lead, he said, nope, we'll sit on it and go to half. 4 interceptions in the second half of the year. All 4 came in losses. All 4 came at critical moments. Take any one of them back, they're likely 13-3 instead of 12-4, and they have the bye. So how much of it falls on Tom Brady? An enormous amount of it, because you can't have the number 1 defense in all of football, even if the second half of the year it wasn't historically great, and be the number 3 seed in your own conference and have it not fall on the offense. And if it falls on the offense, it falls on the quarterback in 2019, the way football's played.
I don't necessarily think it's all Tom Brady's fault, and it falls so much on him. You know, the offense is what it is this year. Usually they're an offensive-driven team, but this year it's not the same thing. They counted on it being an offensive-driven team at the beginning of the season when they had Antonio Brown, a healthy Julian Edelman. They drafted a first-rounder in N'Keal Harry, so they wanted their offense to be the driving force of this team. But when Antonio Brown left, Josh Gordon left, Edelman's been hurt all year. They're just not the same team. They need this defense to play well to win every game this year. They're not getting separation on the outsides, and it's frustration on Tom Brady. You know, that's why he's making a lot of error throws. He's rattled all game because the pass rushes are getting to him. It's just he's flustered right now. He's trying to force things right now. His receivers aren't getting open, so he's going to need this defense to play well. Yes, he threw a pick 6 at Eric Rowe, which was big in this game, but the defense didn't help him out at all. And I think for him to win this playoff game and for him to win the rest of the season, the defense has to play well, because they just don't have the personnel on offense to win these games, Tom Brady alone.
I think all those 4 interceptions, both of you guys are right. A lot of the fault goes to Tom Brady, but I think you got to even look even past Tom Brady. They had Antonio Brown. Tom Brady didn't want to get rid of him. They had, obviously Gordon. He got moved around, different things. They needed to find someone to replace Antonio Brown. They needed to find someone to replace Gronk before that. That fault falls directly on the shoulders of Bill Belichick. Because you knew you have a 42-year-old quarterback. You knew that you needed some playmakers down the field. You knew that you're losing your security blanket in the biggest mismatch in pro football over the last 10 years in Rob Gronkowski, and you didn't replace that guy. And so when you're talking about a guy in Tom Brady who's older, that's going to need people around to make him better, to make him elite again, and you don't replace him, then that's the coach, that's the GM's fault. They have to make sure that they have a nice group of receivers, nice group of athletes around them, including that offensive line. They didn't do enough in the offseason to help Tom Brady.
But so here's where I would push back on that. They drafted a receiver in the first round, a year after drafting a running back in the first round. They then traded a second-round pick for another receiver. Now, maybe they just missed on all those guys. Or maybe N'Keal Harry is not having the success, and I know he was hurt for part of the year, that some of these other rookie receivers are having, because DK Metcalf gets to play with Russell Wilson, and McCole Hardman gets to play with Patrick Mahomes. And A.J. Brown, who has been sensational, and I can't believe I'm saying this, gets to play with Ryan Tannehill Hill, who this year is playing out of his mind. Mohamed Sanu and Emmanuel Sanders were both traded for hours apart. Emmanuel Sanders has been an impact player. Maybe they traded for the wrong guy because they traded for Sanu first. Or maybe it's that Sanu would look as good as he looks in New England if he were with Jimmy Garoppolo, and Emmanuel Sanders would look like the hell happened to Emmanuel Sanders if he were in New England. The common thread here is the quarterback play.
Or maybe they needed a Gronk. Maybe that the way that Belichick used that tight end in that offense was the difference. And you see, Brady needs him. Brady needs him in the playoffs. Brady needs him as the one or two, those one or two catches that he's not getting at the end of games. Maybe that was the one position of all the moves they made that they didn't replace this year.
And Gronk was the safety blanket, but where do the Patriots go from here? Because Brady is just going to get older. Do they get another receiver in the first round to create weapons around him? What do New England do from here to make sure they are successful? Like, I don't know.
Like, you mean looking ahead to Tennessee like looking into next year?
Looking into next year.
Wow.
They have to find themselves a deep threat. They need to find themselves a consistent nature in the offensive line, first of all. They want to get that run game going to the same way that they did towards the end of last year with Sony Michel. They tried to get it going last week. Sony Michel actually had a pretty successful day against the Dolphins, but they need that deep threat. They need that thing that's going to threaten the defense, that's going to put fear into a defense. Tom Brady isn't getting any younger. He's not in the situation where he can carry this team like he did 10 years ago. At this point, you need better players around him. You're absolutely right. They have to find someone that can be a mismatch like Gronk was.
All right, so a few quick points. One is to answer your question. What they do next year is I believe they are going to have a new quarterback. The New England Patriots refused to give Tom Brady a contract extension when in his previous 3 years he had done, in order, the greatest comeback in Super Bowl history, then won the league MVP, then won another Super Bowl. That was his resume of the 3 years prior to this offseason, and he still sang for his supper, and they said, no, you can't have it. We will not extend you. If they wouldn't extend him then at age 41, coming off of all the things he had just done, this year at age 42, when they don't get a bye, when his numbers are as bad as they are. So that's the first point. Second point, I think it is disrespectful to Brady's greatness historically to say, well, if he doesn't have the greatest tight end ever, arguably, how can he function? He didn't used to need the greatest tight end ever. They won a Super Bowl one year when Gronk was hurt.
But he's not the greatest ever anymore.
Well, and that leads...
In not bringing him back, you are doing him
So that leads to the final point, which is it is not just that he's not the greatest ever anymore. It's that over the second half of the season, he hasn't been the greatest ever. He hasn't been great. He hasn't been good. He hasn't been average. He's been really bad. We used the Peyton Manning, the final year in Denver example, and they, by the way, did win that Super Bowl, but that defense was really great, better than this Patriots defense. And we've been saying, well, Brady hasn't deteriorated to that level, Peyton Manning in 2015. Well, look at Brady's last 8 games and tell me what level it is. Last 8 games, he's 32nd in the league in completion percentage, 30th in yards per pass, and 27th in passer rating. If that's not on him, then what is?
Well, you also got to look at the teams that they played in the second half. The first half of the season, they were in cupcake mode. They were playing the softest teams in the NFL. The second half, they played much tougher teams: Houston, KC, Baltimore. Those are just tough teams to beat, and much more qualified and better football teams than the Patriots.
Agreed, but those teams, except for Baltimore, none of them have elite defenses. Houston does not have an elite defense. Kansas City's defense played well as of late. I give them credit. Buffalo's probably the best defense they played as of late.
But they don't have to be elite against that football team. That's the point. They don't have enough playmakers, so your defense doesn't have to be elite against Tom Brady in this New England offense.
All right, we got to take a break. Brandon, stick around. Coming up, does anybody want to coach Baker Mayfield? Show of hands. Next up for Which means they are planning this week. How much of that do you put on Tom Brady, Nick?
Oh, an enormous amount. It is obviously not all his fault, and one could argue he put them in position to get the bye when he drove down the field against Miami to take the lead. And if the defense could just hold up, they would have a bye, and it would have just been a scare. Another bad Patriots game that Coach Mangini would say, but they found a way to win, so it did no style points. And so the defense, though, that had been carrying this team all year, finally had a slip up, and it cost them the bye. But the reason the defense has had to carry them all year is because of substandard offensive play.